Good afternoon, folks, and thanks for joining us. My name is Tim Wheaton, joined as always by Frazer Krohn, the editor at MMA Sucka. How you doing today, Frazer?
Yeah, still on a high from this weekend. I think the UFC card had that big fight feel going into it for me all fight week. We got bits and bobs online, YouTube, and we had the press conference that we sometimes don't get, especially obviously for the fight nights we don't get them. And it had that big fight feel going in. We had obviously two title fights, then the Khamzat fight, and Mackenzie Dern, Tecia Torres is a huge fight. These two girls have headlined before, and then we've got scattered throughout the card. We had big names competing throughout. We had Raquel Pennington, Aspen Ladd sort of buried on the prelims. Well, that's a former title challenger and a former headliner. So it had that big fight feel going in, and I think it really lived up to that. I think it was a really, really good card.
You know what? I completely co-sign. The two headlining fights were basically top pound for pound titles because I think Volkanovski is up there for pound, especially after this weekend. Petr Yan was my number one pick on pound for pound. So this weekend had a little bit of drama. It had a big fight feel, but coming out of it, we have a lot to talk about. And let's start with let's not bury the lead. I think there's one fight that everyone wants us to talk about. The guy who is the secret headliner and secret behind the UFC, Khamzat Chimaev. Came up in ranks. He was number 11 facing number 2. It's a matter of framing this fight. He won 2 rounds, I would argue quite clearly, got beat up and dropped in the second round. There's a lot of different ways to frame this fight of if we're looking at if he's facing for a title right now, how does he look? If we assume he's a developing fighter, if he's a low-ranked fighter coming up and fighting a contender, or he's already a great fighter facing a contender. It really depends. You see every line of where you're at in this guy's fandom, but I think we have to be realistic. He came up and faced a challenger. If he fights like that against even a Luque, I think he's going down. If he fights the champion, I think he's going down as well. If he keeps improving, that sounds good. But to say he looks like garbage or he looks amazing is being disingenuous. But Frazer, I don't want to say too much. What do you think? What did you think of the fight, and what's Chimaev's future hold?
Yeah, I think completely co-sign on everything you say. I think if he faces Usman next, I think Usman isn't going to buy into the Chimaev. I think to a degree Burns did buy into that Chimaev hype, which is why we saw quite a slow start from Burns early on. Usman's not going to do that. Usman's the champion for a reason. Usman's going to see that Chimaev gassed after 3 rounds, and he's going to look to take him into the deep waters.
Yep.
Usman's a lot bigger than Burns as well. Burns managed to make 155. Usman's not making 155.
No,
ended on it, And the same with Colby. I don't think Colby buys into anybody's hype other than his own. So I think if Colby was to be next, I think Colby for me doesn't have the punching power of Usman, which means that he probably wouldn't rock Chimaev. But Chimaev's takedown defense phenomenal in this fight, and I think he didn't give Burns the respect that he needed, that he deserved. And at the end of the day, what a fight it was,
Yeah, that's true.
That's the takeaway from this. Yeah. We can, up to this fight, Chimaev had absorbed just 1 strike. This fight, he absorbed 141. So 140 more strikes than he had absorbed beforehand. But we needed that, we needed that for Chimaev to see, we didn't want the kind of Francis Ngannou rise where he gets completely exposed in the wrestling.
That's true.
We wanted to see Khamzat in deep waters, and we definitely saw that against Gilbert Burns. And, I think the Burns fight was certainly the right one to make, because Burns has been there. He's fought for the title. He's in and around the top 3 of the division. Obviously, he was ranked number 2 on Saturday.
Yeah.
Chimaev will be ranked obviously top 5 now, but I think he loses if he faces Usman next. I think he loses to Usman. Rocky Edwards is a different one, Leon Edwards, because Leon on the feet is elite in my opinion, and then his wrestling is sometimes what lets him down ever so slightly. He's also not the biggest welterweight, so Chimaev may have a bit of an easier time with him. And
But this is I want to throw something at you quick with regarding Leon Edwards, because this fight with Gilbert Burns and Khamzat Chimaev is essentially is 2 ground guys striking. both of them are ground guys primarily. If he strikes with Leon Edwards, I don't think he can win. If he takes it to the ground, it's kind of an easy fight, which is a weird thing in MMA, but it's a matter of if he fights to the best of his abilities, which I don't think he maybe necessarily was in this fight, but I don't know. What do you think of the Leon fight? Sorry to interject there.
No. Yeah, like you said, I think that it's grappler versus grappler on the feet, like we saw Usman versus Colby. Number one was grappler versus grappler played out on the feet. I think Chimaev was obviously he did get the takedown a couple of times, but he was wary of Gilbert Burns' guard game. With the greatest respect to Leon, I don't think Chimaev will be that concerned about Leon Edwards' back game off his back. Edwards, yes, he's by far and away the better striker, but he doesn't have one punch knockout power, one punch power to rock an opponent. McGregor coming up was managed to drop Diaz multiple times. Edwards wasn't able to drop Diaz, although he dominated the fight. He wasn't able to drop Diaz at all in that fight. And we'll go on to talk about the main event, but that's where I think Volkanovski really put it all together. Is he sat down and he shots a lot more. Now Edwards is a little bit risk averse, as far as he probably doesn't sit down on all of the shots that he throws because he doesn't want to be taken down or he always wants to be defensively aware. Yeah. And I think Chimaev probably, I don't want to disrespect Edwards, but I think Chimaev Edwards is a phenomenal fight. I couldn't pick that one now because we don't know what Edwards is going to look like against Usman. If he gets dominated on the ground by Usman, it's easy probably to say that Chimaev probably does the same to him. If he beats up Usman on the feet and then gets taken down, it's probably easy to say that he's going to beat Chimaev up on the feet. But I think, Colby's probably going to be next. That's what was discussed throughout fight week by Dana White, and that makes sense to me.
Yeah,
but
it does.
You've got the boogeyman of the division in Vicente Luque, who's fighting this weekend, who's on a phenomenal win streak, who finishes pretty much every fight that he competes in, and is also a big guy. He's a big welterweight. He has to cut a lot to get down to welterweight. Mm-hmm. That's not an easy fight for Chimaev because Chimaev won't be able to just rock Luque like he did Burns with. He dropped Burns with a jab in I think it was the first round. He dropped Burns with a jab. Yeah. He's not going to be able to do that to someone like Vicente Luque. He's taking big shots off the likes of, Tyron Woodley and alike. So, I think before we start matching Chimaev up, we have to see how this weekend goes first. And then maybe, you look at a final eliminator between Luque and Chimaev.
So did we just round out what did we used to call welterweight, like stale weight or something like that? Is the division finally moving? Do we have a bunch of fresh contenders in the welterweight division finally after 3 years of nothing happening? Oh,
that's the thing, isn't it? And but then you've got such a dominant champion in Usman that for me, Usman's pound for pound number one still. It doesn't, this weekend didn't change the number one spot because I think Usman could go up to middleweight and have as much success as he has at welterweight with Volkanovski. I think he's, for me, going in at number two now at pound for pound because he put on such a good performance this weekend. But it's I don't think Usman struggles with any of these guys. It's his age that's going to catch up with him and be the struggling factor for Usman rather than the ability of the division below him.
And like we saw with guys like Tyron Woodley and there's some other ones of just these incredible falls of when age catches you, age got you. You know what I mean? Of it's just, it gets you overnight. You're not expecting it. No one sees it. There's not a gradual fall that you can look at. It's usually just this overnight, especially when you have contenders as skilled as Luque and Leon Edwards. Do you think the UFC now, let's say Luque gets a win this weekend and you got Khamzat, Leon and Edwards all at the top. What do you do if you're the UFC? And I know we like Edwards, but what do you do if you're the UFC? Nothing's even official or signed. They just were like, yeah, no, sure, we'll give Leon a title shot.
Yeah, that's like I said last week. If you're Leon Edwards, you're hoping that Chimaev puts in a fairly stale performance. And unfortunately for Edwards, it was fight of the year contender. One of the best 3-round fights I've ever seen. And I think Edwards will still get it in International Fight Week in July against Usman, headlining, whether they do 2 numbered cards back to back or just the one. he's either headline or co-headliner, in my opinion,
Mhm.
to it. And the only person he co-headlines is McGregor. You know,
True.
if McGregor comes back, Usman co-headlines. But then you've got to also consider, you know, if McGregor comes back International Fight Week, he's saying, "Oh, I want to go up and face Usman." The UFC aren't probably going to deny him that shot, which is, you know, we can't go into that now because we'll be talking about that for the next 4 or 5 hours. Why, or the pros and cons of the McGregor effect. But yeah, I think Edwards should be next, and I think you know, August, September time, we could potentially see Chimaev versus Luque as a final eliminator. But then what do you do with Colby? You know, he's since losing to the champion, he's 1-0, and you know, yes, it's against Jorge Masvidal. It's not the elite, and that was more of a money fight. But where do you go with Colby from here? You know, it's like you say. Finally, we've got the welterweight division is moving. You know, I'm just looking at the rankings now. Colby's number 1. Leon's jumped up to number 2. Khamzat's jumped 8 places to number 3 now.
Yeah.
So you know, and even further down the division, let's not rule out Bilal Muhammad winning this weekend because you know he's a solid competitor. But my pick will be Luque going in. But you know, you still got Wonderboy Thompson, Sean Brady is undefeated.
Sean Brady's a good prospect. Yeah.
Shavkat Rakhmonov at number 15.
That's a good one. This is a good division out of nowhere.
Exactly. You know, I think it's as strong as the divisions either side. I mean, it's much stronger than middleweight because Adesanya's beat number 1, number 3, number 4. Number 5. You know, and
number 1's beat the other 5 in that division.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's quite a stale division. Then obviously you look at lightweight, and there are contenders at lightweight, but I think there's much more competitive contenders at welterweight. And you know, finally, and you know, we've got to attribute that to Khamzat. You know, if Khamzat wasn't there, who's Burns fighting this weekend? No one. And we're still in the situation where we've got Leon Edwards coming up in July. Nothing really happening before then. Then probably Luque next, and you know, Khamzat now, I think 5-0 in the UFC with 4 finishes and a fight of the night. You know, this was the exact perfect fight for Khamzat Chimaev because it's not like anyone would say, Gilbert Burns is past it. You know, he's the much smaller guy. Gilbert Burns he was a smaller guy, but he's a game opponent at all times in a fight. He's 2 fights ago, he dropped the champion, he really badly rocked the champion and went the best part of 3 rounds with him. So I think Gilbert Burns was the perfect opponent, and I think Khamzat Chimaev passed that test with flying colours because now again, like we said with Paddy Pimblett months ago, people will be less scared to fight Chimaev now because we've seen his gas tank, you know, struggle. Yes, it was, you know, that's not a normal fight, but his gas tank didn't, you know, they were both gassed, both guys, and that was only a 3-round fight. Colby will be confident that he can work at 95% for 5 hard rounds. And how does that play out? You know, if Khamzat gets really tired in the last 2 rounds and Colby can just overwhelm him, how does that play out? We'll have to see.
It would be incredible if Khamzat can get a win over Colby Covington. It would be incredible because I would just on the face of it, I think Colby wins that fight. Better counter wrestling, better tactical striking overall, especially based on what we saw this weekend. But again, it's going back to like, does Khamzat keep improving from here? We have to assume yes, he keeps kind of getting on that trajectory and keeps getting better. If his skill level plateaus at this fight, I don't think he cracks that top 3 any more than he already has, but remains to be seen. Let's move forward to the pound for pound boys. Your Volkanovski keys to victory, exchange in bursts. Oh my God, Frazer, were you ever on the nose? This was a sad affair. And you know what? Chad Sung Jung is getting on in years. He got absolutely battered in this fight. He's still a top 10 ranked guy who had a win recently, well within the top 10. Volkanovski made it look like these guys were 2 different leagues apart. This looked like an amateur versus a professional. But that gap, when Volkanovski isn't facing a Max Holloway, he is that good. He is like leagues ahead of most of this division. This guy wants to go up in title because he's bored of the division. That is saying a lot. What do you think of Volkanovski Chad Sung Jung fight?
Yeah, I can't lie and say that I expected that fight to play out like that because
not
because I
that
thought
dominant.
no, exactly. I had Volkanovski winning the fight going into it, but I didn't have him winning, like you say, in such a manner in the way that he did, because it was so he won every single second of that fight, and he wasn't scared of Zombie's power. I think he probably felt Zombie's power early on in the fight, and then he was able to stay in the pocket for longer than I thought he would, because at the end of the day, Zombie's quite a one dimensional. When's the last time we saw Zombie throw a high kick? I honestly could not tell you the last time I saw Zombie throw a high kick, and that's why, and he doesn't throw an awful lot of knees, he doesn't throw an awful lot of elbows. Zombie's he's a boxer with pretty decent grappling,
Yes.
And that's why Volk was able to stay in the pocket against Max. You don't want to be staying in the pocket for too long, because Max will throw a knee up the middle and slice your head right open. He'll look to put a trip in there. He'll look to land a couple of low kicks or something on the end of it, which is why we probably see Volkanovski a little bit more reserved against Max, because on paper Zombie has the power advantage over Max, so you wouldn't want to stay in the pocket for so long.
Yeah.
But what we've seen play out for Volkanovski is that he was more willing to stay in the pocket with Zombie, which is ironic, because that's something that I wrote in my keys to victory for him not to do, because we've seen Zombie at short range. Dennis Bermudez, that uppercut from literally, it was just a step in uppercut. It was really short range, and he knocked Bermudez completely out,
Mm-hmm.
But I think this is, well, without doubt, the best performance of Volkanovski's career. But I think it says more about the featherweight division, because I've, in my notes, I've written down, why are there so many one-sided fights at 145? We've got that one-sided fight, Max Holloway versus Brian Ortega, one-sided fight, and Max Holloway versus Calvin Kattar, one-sided fight. Kattar versus Giga Chikadze, pretty much a one-sided fight. Edson Barboza versus Bryce Mitchell a few weeks ago, one-sided fight. I'd be interested to see what your opinion is on why it happens at 145 that we do get these one-sided fights, because we'll go on to talk about the bantamweight division in a second,
where it's not one-sided,
where it's not one-sided at all. It's a split decision in the title fight, and down at flyweight, it's not one-sided between Kai Kara France and Askar Askarov a few weeks ago, Brandon Moreno and Figueiredo. Charles Oliveira versus Dustin Poirier wasn't a one-sided fight. Usman versus Colby, not a one-sided fight. Adesanya Whitaker, not a completely dominant one-sided fight. It just happens to be at featherweight when we're getting these one-sided fights at the top of the division, which is ironic, really. 145 is one of the better divisions in the UFC, with some very good, promising fighters and some very high level, more established fighters. But yeah, we kind of, when we mix all these guys up, we kind of get the conclusions we already had drawn. Divisions in the UFC are sometimes really weird with how they follow trends sometimes, in that, remember when welterweight was just wrestlers for some reason, and then middleweight at that time was just strikers for some reason. 145, just strikers. There is not a wrestler in that division for some reason. It happens that the good strikers in that division seem to be miles ahead of the great striker. Like, we're talking about like AAA strikers versus a AA striker is the separation there, and they make it look like it's night and day. Max Holloway looks like he's so far ahead of a top 5 ranked Calvin Kattar. I don't understand why these guys, like, there's 2 guys at the top of the division who are so far ahead. I don't know what you do with this division at this point. 145 outside of the top 5 and kind of in the top 5 doesn't have a clear contender. And there's not a clear contender that makes me curious for, like, Volkanovski beats these guys. Even a third Max Holloway probably wins that fight. Yair, Kattar. My God, yeah, he beats all these guys. What do you do with this division, Fraser? Yeah, that's completely echoing, Giga Chikadze losing against Calvin Kattar, especially in the manner that he did, eliminates him as a contender for at least 2 or 3 fights, in my opinion, because he's still, if he can't beat a Calvin Kattar like that, with the greatest respect to Kattar, Max Holloway absolutely dominates him like that. Because Max Holloway dominated. I know MMA math doesn't always plan out like that, but styles make fights, and the way that Calvin Kattar beat up Giga Chikadze is the exact same way that Max Holloway would beat up Giga Chikadze. And the exact same way, if not worse, that Volkanovski would beat Giga Chikadze.
Yes.
We've got Brian Ortega, Yair Rodriguez, if Rodriguez, I think, that's not official, but it's been in the talks for about 5 years. But
Yeah.
if Rodriguez wins that one, it's a fresh face for Volkanovski. But we know that Holloway will be next with Volkanovski. Going down, we've got Arnold Allen on the outside. I think he's one big win or maybe two wins away from a title shot. Josh Emmett he's got the holes in his game. And then, I think the boogeyman of the division, or the boogeymen of the division even, you got Bryce Mitchell, who's the grappler in the top 15.
Yeah.
That the only grappler in the top 15, really. You got Movsar Evelev, ranked 13, undefeated as well. I think that would make sense for me to be the next fight between the two, Bryce Mitchell and Movsar Evelev.
Yeah.
And then you got Tapora, still ranked at 15. I want him to come back down to featherweight, having fought Jai Herbert at lightweight, because he was getting beaten up by Herbert before he knocked him out cold.
Yeah, that's true.
And, how does Volkanovski match up with let's say, Charles Oliveira or Justin Gaethje? Charles Oliveira is there to be hit a lot.
He's hittable. He is
Justin
very hittable.
Gaethje, unless, Justin, the new, we still call it new, despite the fact he kind of put this in over a number of fights, but the new Justin Gaethje, ignoring the Michael Chandler fight, because that was just fun, but, ignoring that fight, Gaethje doesn't quite put his foot on the gas. I think if you put your foot on the gas like an old Justin Gaethje against Volkanovski's then obviously got to be on his bike for the entire, as long as you last. If you show any hesitation against Volkanovski, he will be able to get his feints, get his reads, and I'd fancy him against most at lightweight. I think the Makhachev fight would be tough, because Makhachev's wrestling is elite, and Volkanovski does have good takedown defense, but it's not, it's not elite takedown defense. His takedown defense is 70%, but he has been taken down by the Brian Ortegas of the world, the Darren Elkins of the world, Chad Mendes 3 times. He is being taken down by these guys. And if you get taken down by an Islam Makhachev, you don't get back up, unfortunately, for all opponents of Makhachev. But
well, yeah, let me jump in on the Alexander Volkanovski. The thing is that what we're saying is, yes, if Volkanovski gets his feints going and he's landing in combinations and everything like that, and he has his opponent reacting to the wrong strikes with his feints, yeah, he probably does have a pretty good day against either Charles Oliveira or especially Justin Gaethje. But that is what we're talking about with pound for pound skill. Skill for skill, he's probably better than a lot of these guys at lightweight. But once you actually include the size disadvantage that he would have, both Oliveira and Gaethje are about 5'10", whereas Volkanovski is only 5'6" and doesn't have a reach advantage over either guy. Pound for pound, yeah, I agree. He does beat these guys if they're the same size, but at a different size, I don't really know. Also, Justin Gaethje, I think that smart Justin Gaethje, someone pointed out to me and I can't unsee it. The smart Justin Gaethje fighter only existed in the bubble. With no audience, he could do that. When the audience is cheering, now he's bloodthirsty. Then he falls apart, right?
I've never thought of it like that. If you think, the two performances. Outside Ferguson. Of the Khabib.
Yes.
Yeah, but the Ferguson performance where we obviously saw him really reserved. Well, I say reserved, really fighting smart. Was an empty arena, not even a few fans in the Apex.
Yeah,
it was empty. So when if he catches Volkanovski, you might just go for blood. But
I don't know, size advantage. I'm not sure if he can go up. I would like to see him go up to 155 because there's no one at 145. But I feel like the size advantage might just be too much. Skill for skill, absolutely. Size, I don't know anymore.
Exactly. And, I think that's what we saw when Holloway went up to face Poirier, despite the fact that Dustin was a former featherweight. He was massive in comparison to Holloway. And, I can't get the image out of my head in the first round of Poirier landing an overhand right, rocking Holloway to the point where he almost kind of ran across and almost, bounced off the fence. There's a clear size disadvantage for Volkanovski going in, and is it an Adesanya versus Jan Blachowicz situation all over again, where on the feet he probably could dominate these guys because he's going to be a lot quicker than these guys. Both Gaethje and Oliveira are there to be hit, but then as soon as they start mixing in the wrestling, how much of an impact does the size have? But we'll have to wait and see. I think Holloway probably will be next.
I think you're right about that too. Yeah, there's no one else.
You know, Henry Cejudo, but we'll have to discuss that after we discuss the bantamweight co-main.
And I'm excited for 145. Also, I think this moved up Volkanovski in my pound for pound rankings. I'm so impressed with him. He's so much better than he made this guy. He made Korean Zombie a game veteran who had wins recently in the top 10. He just made him look like he was an amateur in this fight.
And it's what he needed as well to put in such a dominant performance. You know, he's putting in these dominant performances, these fight of the nights, and he needed that finish. He really needed to sit down on his shots, put his foot on the gas, and he did that. And you know, I think it's definitely it's helped his stock. And you know, just we're always going on at referees for bad stoppage. That was a phenomenal stoppage.
This was
phenomenal.
Really,
I don't think Herb Dean. I don't think Dean wanted Zombie to come out for the fourth round. He gave him 45 seconds. The first big shot that landed, wave it off. Zombie didn't complain. No one complained. I've never seen anyone on social media. That's where we obviously often see people say early stoppage, late stoppage. Phenomenal work by Herb Dean.
And speaking of audience complaining, we got the most complainest of them all. Aljamain Sterling retains his bantamweight title when he wins 3-2 on 2 judges' scorecards, taking the first round. That was the most important one. In this fight, Aljamain Sterling showed why he was so special to so many of us, like why he looked skill for skill in a different league. The first fight with Petr Yan, he exhausted himself. He's overthrowing fights. The second fight with Petr Yan, he fixed a lot of these holes that he had. He was, I hate to say it, he was largely outstriking Petr Yan for 3 rounds. He was out-grappling Petr Yan for 3 rounds, I would argue. But people really want to argue about that first round, but I don't know if we do a rubber match. No, you know what? Let's talk about the fight first, because there's a lot to talk about in this fight. What did you think of the fight? How did you judge it? And how about that fan reaction?
Yeah, I want to apologize to Aljamain Sterling first.
Yeah, me too.
We didn't give him a shot last week. We said, and I don't think many people did, and rightfully so. He was battered in that first fight. Apart from the first round when he sort of went all or nothing, he was battered in that first fight, and there's nothing to suggest we hadn't seen him since. You're only as good as your last fight, and he wasn't good in that last fight. And we did allude to the fact that the neck surgery, how much of impact on his game was that neck injury having, and clearly it was having a big impact because he was able to go for 5 hard rounds. And in my opinion, I think he won the first round. I've watched the first round alone. I watched the whole fight, and then I've watched the first round alone 3 more times since then. And it's it's only Tuesday morning, and I've already watched 15 minutes of the exact same round. And there's no damage from Yan. Sterling goes back to his corner, and they were just wiping sweat off him and reapplying the Vaseline. No damage whatsoever from Yan to Sterling in the first round. The cleaner shots were landed by Aljo.
Yep.
The sort of teep kick, the sort of stab to the stomach with the toes and the ball of the foot.
Yep.
That was landing. Aljo was going high and then going to the body with the kicks. Yes, they were pretty much blocked, but he was the one sort of initiating the exchanges. There's a lot of pressure from Petr Yan, which I think is where a lot of people are skewed on this. Aljo pretty much had his back up against the defense, or was on the outside of the octagon that's drawn on the octagon inside the octagon.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
People know when we look at breakdowns, you want to, if you're on the outside, you're on the outside of the octagon that's drawn inside the octagon. Yeah. Aljo was on the outside of that for the majority of the round, but you've got to do something with that pressure. And Petr Yan did next to nothing with that pressure.
Yes,
he didn't. Yes, he was pressuring Aljo and he was forcing him to the outside, but he wasn't landing anything. He wasn't throwing anything. And when he did throw, it was largely blocked by Aljo. The stats, I've looked at the stats. I think that I can't see how Petr Yan landed 13 total strikes in that first round.
Yeah, I don't know where those were
coming. I'm not quite sure where those 13 strikes were landed.
Those were light shots if he's landing anything, because Aljamain Sterling landed about half of his strikes, and all of them were notable strikes. He landed more, and he landed better shots. They were harder shots, especially on a rewatch when we're actually looking for these things. I think Aljamain Sterling clearly won the first round.
Yeah, for sure. And you know, I do question whether there would be controversy if it was the other way around, if it's a split decision in favor of Petr Yan. I don't think there would be, because
No.
people just tend to, unfortunately, not like Aljamain Sterling, and that can't skew the fight itself. The fight is what it is, whether you like the guy or not. These are two faceless, personality-less fighters. These are just two guys. They might as well be wearing morph suits. Two guys just going in, so you don't know who's who, and just fighting. And okay, this guy won. It's red corner versus blue corner. It's not. I kind of wanted Petr Yan to win, so I'm probably going to give him the first round, which unfortunately I think is what Dana White kind of was saying. I think the judges got it wrong. I think Petr Yan won that. I think it's just better for Dana White if Petr Yan wins that, because it opens up a Petr Yan TJ Dillashaw fight, or a Petr Yan Sandhagen 2 fight, or a Petr Yan Aldo 2 fight. But unfortunately, he didn't win that fight, so these fights can't happen yet. But
let me jump on the fandom argument there before we move forward on that. But yeah, if you're contextualizing your MMA ideas through fandoms of like, I like this person and therefore everyone else is garbage, you're missing out on what the sport actually is and how cool this sport is. Like Aljamain Sterling did incredible things. Like he couldn't quite get the takedown, so he did back takes. This sport is insane. This is madness. Like it is such a, like, you and I both picked Petr Yan coming in. But yeah, it's a weird thing of like how dislikable is Aljamain's. I like Aljo, but we had an American versus a Russian in red Florida, and people were cheering for the Russian. Is Aljamain Sterling that disliked? Like, do people hate this guy or something? What the hell's going on?
And they seem to dislike him. Everyone liked him going into the Petr Yan fight, and he gets kneed illegally in the head.
And it's his fault somehow?
I from that fight, I've never understood. I didn't see a huge. I think a few people obviously wanted Sandhagen going into their fight. Aljo dominated, and they gave Sterling the respect that he deserved. But it's not his fault for being fouled.
It's not his fault. It wasn't it. Why are you blaming him? But yeah, in this fight, if we're judging it, I'll throw a few other things at Petr Yan fans of like, if you're judging this as a whole or who was closest to finishing, all of that is Aljamain Sterling. He almost had a 10-8 second round. He was closest to finishing the fight several times in round 2 and round 3. He was the more dominant fighter in this fight. He just showed in this fight why he's the better fighter.
Yeah, for sure. And I don't think, like you say, it was close to a 10-8. I don't think it was a 10-8 because the damage wasn't quite there.
Nothing was applied either.
Similar to the first round, he was controlling the fight and controlling where the fight was, but he wasn't doing an awful lot with it. He barely threw any strikes on the ground.
Yeah, because
he was working for position. And so I do think it was a 10-9 round, both 2 and 3.
Yeah,
did worry me slightly for Sterling, going for 10 takedowns in the fifth round, not getting a single one, going for 4 in the 4th round and getting dominated on the floor in the 4th round. But, these are all going forwards. I think obviously we'll probably see him against TJ Dillashaw next.
Yeah.
Surely you can't have Aljo as the bad guy going into that fight. Surely not. Right? TJ Dillashaw has cheated, admitted to cheating, spent all this time out, and you're still going to try and root for that guy? No, it's not for me. In my mind, if we had a good guy and a bad guy going in, that one's quite clear. But I think that where Aljo's going to struggle is a takedown. His takedown accuracy is 21%, and TJ's takedown defense is 86%.
That's massive. Aljo, damn.
Yeah, I think Aljo struggles for the takedown, but I think he deals with TJ a lot better on the feet than he did with Yan. I think everything that Yan was throwing, and even if it was landing on forearms, was rocking Aljo. It was having a massive effect on him. Now, I don't think TJ's got the same power as Petr Yan, but we'll have to see and wait and see if that fight is the one that's made next. But I think
I want to throw Aljamain. When he gets hit, he like looks visually like he got hit. Like every punch, he's just kind of like backing away. His head shakes and stuff. Like he needs to work on taking a punch and not making it look like he took. Because Petr Yan has the exact opposite. Where no matter what hits him, it looks like nothing hits the man at all. Right.
Which is why I think maybe things in the first round. Yeah. Because he was. He was hit with shots and he as he was backing up, so he sort of fell into the fence. Or
yeah. Oh no, Frazer.
Take it.
Oh, you're still there. Good.
Oh, we're still there. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Hit with the right hand while circling off to his right, and he was taking a few extra steps. It looked like he was almost wobbled. Whereas if he had his feet underneath him, he probably would have just taken the shot on the guard and carried on as he was, you know. I completely agree. And, you know, that's not a good look for the judges and for the fans, and especially the fans that, with the greatest respect, aren't into this sport as much as us. We know what we're looking for. We know what a blocked strike looks like. We know what happens when a strike lands.
Yeah.
On UFC.com, the UFC stats, they don't have Gilbert Burns having landed that knockdown in the second, at the end of the second round on Khamzat.
It's weird.
Yes, he looked like he slipped, but he was caught with a humongous shot before that, and I think it's a little bit convenient that he was caught with the biggest shot of the fight for Burns, and he just happened to not have his feet under him at the same time. I'm not sure how much I buy that, but
I agree with you.
Know, going back to Aljamain Sterling, I think it's time we put some respect on Sterling's name. You know, you look at the wins. Good. You look at the wins that he's got on his record. Just since that freak loss to Marlon Moraes, where he was kneed, he's got Brett Johns, who's, you know, a solid grappler, and he dominated him by decision. Cody Stamen, Jimmy Rivera, Pedro Munoz, absolutely didn't give Corey Sandhagen a look in. And now, give or take the first one, he's got 2 wins over Petr Yan.
Yep.
Let's put some respect on his name. I think that the odds makers will be a lot more respectful to him when he in his next fight, which, you know, is trending towards being against TJ Dillashaw or maybe even Henry Cejudo.
Yeah, that's something I think we should probably schedule for a nice slow week, because we still have lots to cover here. But yeah, TJ Dillashaw, 4 fights. He'll have 3 fights in 4 years. Like, I don't know what's going on with the guy. We don't know if his neo footwork is even still existing at this point.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, let's move forward on to what else you want to talk about on this card. I think one of the other fights that we stuck out. Oh, I got the wrong one there. It was Mackenzie Dern, Tecia Torres, split decision, which you and I think both picked split decision. We knew something was going to happen there. Close fight. Mackenzie Dern gets the nod in this one. What do you think of this?
Yeah, I really liked this fight. I thought it was a really good fight. You know, It was striker versus grappler. They went at each other a little bit in the week. But Mackenzie Dern is like the Brazilian zombie. You know, she gets hit and she will not stop, just coming straight forward on the center line, which is probably to her detriment. But I think Tecia Torres was so scared about being taken down, so scared about Mackenzie's ground game, that she probably could have sat down on her shots a little more. When Mackenzie's coming in on the straight line, sit down on those shots, you know, really, or cut an angle and sit down on your shot, which she was cutting angles a lot. And Tecia Torres' footwork was really good. I think I had the right lady winning. I think, you know, Mackenzie Dern's game, and, you know, the first round is what it is. The second round, I think it was the second round when she jumped for that Kimura. I mean, how often do we see that in this sport? You know, the last one I can remember anyone jumping for anything like that to any great effect was Brian Ortega Cub Swanson, when he jumped on the guillotine and was hanging off Cub Swanson's neck. Dern jumped for the Kimura this time.
That's cool.
Then managed to get sort of like a foot lock, and then it's almost like a foot lock in a knee bar. And, you know, I think Dern did deserve the victory, but, you know, unfortunately for her, you look, you know, higher up in the division. She's moved up one place now to 4. Yang Xiaonan's moved down to 5. I think she struggles against Yang Xiaonan. Obviously, we know she struggles against Marina Rodriguez, having lost to her last time out. Carla's facing Rose. Wiley's facing Joanna, obviously, that was announced this week.
Ooh, which I'm excited for. I think was that the one that we picked, or did we pick for Joanna's comeback fight? I remember we picked it.
I think, yeah, it was either that or Marina, I think.
Yeah. I think we like Marina more, just to get some fresh blood movement. But
I'm not mad about that one at all, you know.
No.
But, you know, if you look down for Mackenzie Dern, it's going to be Yang Xiaonan next. That's fairly obvious, because, you know, beneath her, Nina Ansarov already got a victory. Tecia Torres already got a victory. Amanda Hebas got a loss on her record, but Amanda Hebas moving up in weight to face Caitlin Chikagian.
Sure.
and then you're not going to fight anyone lower than, number 8 if you're number 4. It's going to be Yang Xiaonan next.
Yeah.
And I think she struggles against Yang Xiaonan, but we'll have to wait and see.
Yang Xiaonan is good on the feet, but she seems to almost have negative skill on the ground, right? Like if she was a video game character in UFC 4, she'd be like -1 on the submissions or something weird like that. However, we'll see how the fight goes. I don't have anything to throw on it. What else do you want to cover off on this event before we look at this weekend's card quickly?
I think Ian Gary got some valuable 15 minutes. I don't.
Cage time.
Darian Weeks was solid, and I did think Gary a little bit disappointing. I'm comparing him to Paddy Pimblett, but I forget that he's 9 or 10 fights into his professional career. Ian Gary,
true.
9 fights. Paddy Pimblett's had a lot more fights, so he's had the experience of being in there with a tough wrestler, a tough striker, a tough grappler, a tough karate guy.
Yeah,
he's got a lot more fights than Ian Gary. So I think Ian Gary's rise to stardom isn't going to be quite as steep as Paddy Pimblett's, but I think I'm not mad about that. I do have to sort of check myself and remember that he is 9 fights into a UFC career. Obviously, he only got married a few months ago. He's got a baby on the way, so he's got a lot going on. Raquel Pennington, Aspen Ladd was disappointing, really was. I don't know what's next for Aspen Ladd. She's undersized at 145. She's underskilled at the end of the division at 135.
Yeah,
and but she is still young, but she's still got a long way to go, in my opinion, before she even considers a title shot. And then the other two that I'd say, Mickey Gall got sent to the shallow round.
Man, Mike Mallet, this guy, this was good.
I can't, I'm going to hold my hands up. I hadn't heard of Mallet before this fight, and I'm not afraid to admit that, but I will certainly be tuning in next time out because he got busted up and he just landed.
That was a hook from hell. That was so solid. And that was a connection and a half.
Yeah, from what I believe, first time Mickey Gall's been finished. He was TKO'd by Diego Sanchez, but that was he gassed out against Sanchez, if you remember, and it was sort of a merciless TKO. But
what a weird career Mickey Gall's had. But
exactly. And then Alexia Linick doing Alexia Linick things, just some random submission that we never see in the UFC, and we, I'd love to break it down for you, but I simply don't know how he tapped to it. I think it's just one of those where it's just an uncomfortable position rather than any sort of blood choke or lock. It's the Scarfold is just strange submission, and I'm not even surprised. It's Alexia Linick. What do you expect?
Yeah, that was a weird one. Yeah, Linick. Yeah, that's what he does. He does those kind of top side submissions, and he's impressive at it. I agree. Mike Mallet. Let's see this kid bang someone else. That sounds like fun. Alexia Linick, good for you. This absolutely awesome stuff. Let's take a quick peek at this weekend. Vicente Luque and Bilal Muhammad. Again, like we talked about, another top welterweight fight in this division. This is a good main event. The rest of the card
is dog shit.
Man. Oh boy,
it's awful. With the greatest respect to everyone on there, bad card. Bad card.
It's not a good one.
I mean, I'm just looking down it now.
We are full-time writers in MMA, and we're like, I'm not sure who some of these guys are.
For sure, the guys in the co-main event, as per Tapology anyway. Yeah. You've got 2 guys making their UFC debuts in a co-main event.
Dana White Contender Series, but a professional
UFC debuts. Yeah,
but I don't know.
Outside of the main event is a quality main event. We've gone into it a bit. My only pick is that this fight doesn't go 5 rounds because Vicente Luque seems almost scared of hearing anything to do with the judges. The only time he's gone to the judges twice in his UFC career. 3 times in his UFC career. 2 of those back-to-back, a split decision win against Mike Perry and a loss to Stephen Thompson. Since then, Nico Price, doctor stoppage due to an eye injury from Price. Knees and punches for Randy Brown. Obviously, the Darce choke against Tyron Woodley. And I forgot, actually, that he secured the Darce choke last time out against Michael Chiesa. I'd forgotten about that one.
Yep. Yeah, he's good.
He's about that life, and outside of the main event, Miguel Baez is back. William Knight's making his heavyweight debut after setting the record for missing weight by the most amount ever in the UFC.
This card sucks. Like, this is just getting worse.
Lena Landsberg returns. I'm excited to see her return after having a baby.
Sure.
Drakkar Klose is on the card. Chris Barnett's on the card, which is always fun. Jordan Levitt started well and then lost his second fight and then won against Matt Sales in December. But it's all, for me, it's the main event and Bellator this weekend.
So Sam Hayes versus Stella Nunes as combined 4 losses in the UFC. So yeah, what's going on? Yeah, I do like, I'll throw in Vicente Luque. I think Bilal Muhammad is a little bit too hittable, and especially against someone like Vicente Luque. I think he can finish it by sub or knockout, whatever he chooses. But yeah, let's take a look at what else is going on in the MMA world quickly. What do we got for Bellator?
It's all Bellator for me. McKee versus Pitbull 2. That's Nemkov versus Anderson.
That's a great one.
Pico's on the card. Tim Johnson, Linton Vassell, Tyrell Fortune's on the card. Gaston Bolanes is on the card. This yes, it's a Friday night card for Bellator. If they went on Saturday, they would blow the UFC out of the water with this one. Absolutely.
Oh, yeah. This
blow the UFC out of the water. McKee versus Pitbull 2. It finished so quickly the last time out. McKee 18-0. It finished in the first round where he pretty much knocked Pitbull out on the feet before locking in. I think it was a guillotine. I think it went down as a guillotine. It was almost like a standing guillotine,
Mm-hmm.
And then we've got Corey Anderson versus Nemkov. We're seeing how good Nemkov actually is, because Corey Anderson has looked good since going to Bellator.
He really has.
With that being said, his last fight lasted under a minute against Ryan Bader. So how's he going to deal with someone like Nemkov that can mix in the wrestling, the striking, everything? Nemkov is, for me, top 10 pound for pound fighters in the world at the moment. And, we'll have to see if Corey Anderson can hang with him. And I think Nemkov wins. I'll be picking Nemkov going in, but it'll be interesting to see how he does, to be honest, because I don't think Corey Anderson is as good as Corey Anderson thinks Corey Anderson is, but I do think Nemkov is standout.
So I'll mute when I'm not talking. Now that someone's doing some lawn work out there, I guess. Tim Johnson's on the card. Linton Vassell, some banger heavyweights, just looking for knockouts. Yeah, AJ McKee. There's a reason that he was the only fighter outside of the UFC on our pound for pound rankings, because this guy is really good. He's not even a prospect anymore. He is a great fighter. This is a really good card. They're kind of going home to San Jose, California, where Strikeforce really made its bones. So that's a fun one. Yeah, Nemkov, Corey Anderson for the tournament final. This is a really solid Bellator card. This is a lot of fun, isn't it?
This is what I'm saying. And, it would dominate the UFC if they went head to head, but obviously Bellator on Friday, so don't forget that that's on a Friday, not a Saturday, so don't make any plans for the Friday night. And they don't even have any big boxing to go up against. Errol Spence Jr. returns against Ugas this weekend, but I mean, in my opinion, that dominates the UFC as well. That fight alone dominates the UFC. It's difficult for the UFC because they've stacked UFC 273.
Yes.
And then now why wasn't Burns Chimaev headlining this weekend with Luque versus Muhammad as a co-headliner? But it is what it is. Luckily, like I say, they don't have too much boxing on this weekend. You got Errol Spence Jr. returning and Conor Benn returning, which I'm really excited about. But that's UK time, so people will always tune into the UFC. But if you're a casual fan tuning in for the big names, you're probably going to sit out this one because unfortunately it's not stacked with huge names.
No, I co-sign with you. Don't have anything to add on all that lovely stuff. What do you have writing this week? What are you thinking? What's going on with you?
Yeah, I haven't got an awful lot out this week. Again, though, because of Bellator being such a good card, we could probably look into that. We've got plenty up on the site. Previews, opinion pieces. We've got, that you will not find something on MMA Sucka that won't interest you. You know, me and Tim are still active on the Instagram and the Facebook pages. You know, we'll be sharing the all our links and stuff in the description below, because you know MMA Sucka at the moment is thriving. You know, we've got the sort of more niche promotions. You know, the Shamrock FCs. We've got opinion on you know, Henry Cejudo returning, 3 possible opponents. I'm sure we'll go into that a little bit more next week, because like we say, we've got quite a quiet card, and the card after the Luque Mohammed fight is fairly quiet as well. So you might get a little bit more sort of news-based opinion pieces from me and Tim on the pod next week. So yes, be sure to tune in for that.
Speaking of niche stuff, Glory wanted me to put some more content out on the website. So I was like, yeah, sure. Here's some articles on fighters criticizing your CEO. No problem. I'll put some stupid content out for you. But yeah, Glory in bad shape. They also announced, remember Rico Verhoeven, the center of their promotion, the heavyweight kickboxing kingpin, the whole reason Glory even exists today. So yeah, he has a fight announced, and it's not going to be in Glory, but it might be against a Glory heavyweight fighter later this year. What is going on? They're bleeding their own champions. Like,
I didn't even realize that. I haven't heard of that. I didn't catch that.
How weird is that one? Of like, so he's fighting a Glory fighter in kickboxing, not exhibition, in the Netherlands, not under Glory. Are you? Do you want to talk it out? Are you guys okay? You guys aren't looking good. They lost Cedric Dwambe while he was champion. Petch is kind of like their other champion, is kind of in between. They lost Anissa Meksen, who was like their constant contender. There's a bunch of other guys that. Oh, Alexander Pereira. Just like, I get paid more in the UFC rather than being a double champion in Glory. Things aren't looking good for something I enjoy.
Looking like Tiffany is going to be the face of the promotion with in the coming years. I'm not mad about that at all. No. You know, she's quality, but I'm not sure if she planned on quite being such a figurehead in the promotion.
No, man. If we're going to talk more Glory, I think in the next few months, I think we're going to have some major headlines regarding Glory coming up soon. Anyway, from Tim Wheaton and Frazer Krohn from MMA Sucka, the most handsome boys on the network, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.